Hi everybody, it's Richard here again and welcome to the third and final part of where I show my top 100 singles that I have in my collection. As I said in the previous two parts, the two rules are: one, I have to own the single, so something like the Moody Blues Nights in White Satin, which would have been in there, is not in there. And the second is I can only have one song per artist. So we're down to the final 30, and coming in at number 30 for me is Blondie and Dreaming, and this was the first single from her Eat to the Beat album, their Eat to the Beat album, sorry, in 1979. The drums in this are fantastic, the melody is fantastic, it's an absolutely brilliant single, but it didn't get to number one, it only got to number two. And it was actually kept off number one from my number 29 choice, and it's The Police, Message in the Bottle, the first single from their best album in my view, Regatta de Blanc, and this is fantastic. It's got a really good riff, really good guitar, really good bass, great drums, fantastic single all around, and deservedly got to number one. And yes, I would have liked the Blondie to have got to number one for 1 week and then maybe this one go back, but still, fantastic track, and that's my number 29. Now my number 28 is from 1973, and it's Status Quo and Caroline, and I think this is their best track. Now unfortunately a lot of people say that they wrote this about 100 times over for all the other singles, but this is such a good track, it really is. It's from their Hello album, which was their first number one album, absolutely brilliant, and as I say, it gets my number 28. And number 27 is actually a reissue single from a 60s track, and it's a reissue released I think in 1972, and it's The Drifters, and it's Saturday Night at the Movies. So you can count it, this one or the 60s version. It's exactly the same song, it's the same recording, but I absolutely love it. Johnny Moore on vocals, and really brilliant track. And this single itself has At the Club and Memories Are Made of This as the B-sides. So, you know, three fantastic tracks in one single, but Saturday Night at the Movies has always been one of my favourites. At number 26 we have, I don't have a picture sleeve for this, but this is John and Vangelis, and it's I'll Find My Way Home from 1981. I just think it's a really good song, and it sounds very Christmassy in a way, but I just love the melody of it. I love the synthesizer in it. I'm not a huge fan of John Anderson's voice, but with this it works so well. I've always loved it, and it deserved to get to number one. I'm not sure the position, I know it was top 5, probably number 4 or 3 or something like that there, but absolutely brilliant track from 81, John Vangelis, I'll Find My Way Home. And at number 25, and it is She Drives Me Crazy by Fine Young Cannibals, and this is from their 1989 album The Raw and the Cooked. This was a number one I believe in the States, although it didn't get to number one here. It is very dated in sound, but I don't care. I absolutely love it, and it just makes me smile every time I hear it. And it's one of those tracks that I have to play over and over again. I just can't listen to it once. So Fine Young Cannibals, She Drives Me Crazy is my number 25. Now at number 24 it's Roxy Music. Now I did a ranking of the Roxy Music singles a couple of years ago, and I had this at number 2. And I had Avalon at number 1, and I hemmed and hawed, but I'm going to give this Virginia Plain the number 1 position now. This is fantastic, from 72, a number 4 hit, and this is nothing really like the material that was on their first album. Although this did get on their first album in the States, it's not on the UK edition, although CDs now it does include it. But this is just a fantastic track, always was, and the follow-up to it was Pyjamarama, which I bought at the time as a 7-year-old. Love it as well, but Virginia Plain, absolutely brilliant. That's my number 24. And number 23, and it's The Undertones, and it's not Teenage Kicks. It's the follow-up, and it's Get Over You, and again this is highly melodic. It just races on brilliantly. I love the little whistle part at the start, and it just such a good track. Now this was not on their debut album, although whenever the debut album was re-released about 6 months after the original one with a different cover, it got on along with Teenage Kicks. But Get Over You, it didn't reach the top 40. It should have, but unfortunately they were still very unknown at the time. But brilliant track, and that's my number 23. And at number 22, George Harrison and My Sweet Lord. And yes, this is his best single. Yes, it is very religious, but you can't stop singing along to this. Even better is the B-side, What Is Life, which should have been an A-side in its own right in the UK. It was in the States. I don't know why they put it as a B-side to this here, because it had hit single written all over it as well. But My Sweet Lord, everybody knows it, everybody loves it, and absolutely brilliant. And that's my number 22. At number 21, and we have Elton John and Rocket Man, and a number 2 hit from his 1972 album Hunky Chateau. Absolutely beautiful track, and the chorus of this is to die for. It's just, it is his best song. I think it is his best song, never mind his best single. Yeah, really love it, always have. And I remember having this on an old cassette years ago, 20 Power Hits I think he called it. Got the LP now, which I recently bought in the last couple of years, and that's when really I first heard it, because it was only 6 when this came out. But yeah, absolutely love it, and it's my number 21. At number 20, and I thought this was going to be higher, but maybe I've overplayed this a little bit, and it's Dismiss This Charming Man from 1983. It's a top 30 hit at the time, but 9 years later it got into the top 10. And I will always say that this song was the main song of the 80s for me. When I first heard this, I couldn't believe how good it was. I just absolutely loved it. That opening guitar lick from Johnny Marr I thought was unbelievable, as was Morrissey's vocals, everything about it. But I played this to death, and maybe I have overplayed it, but I'm still giving it number 20, This Charming Man. And number 19 from 1983 as well, and it's Mike Oldfield and Moonlight Shadow, an absolutely perfect pop song, perfectly played and perfectly sung by Maggie Reilly. The guitar work in this, especially at the end, is unbelievable, and Maggie Reilly's vocals are just superb, very acoustic-y. And it's rumoured that this was kind of about John Lennon's death, but I'm not too sure how realistic that is. But still, a top 5 hit in 1983 for Mike Oldfield, and it's Moonlight Shadow. And number 18, and it is Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark and Enola Gay, and this is their best single. And it's not just the synth on this I really like, it's the bass line. Now the bass line is so simple, and I mean really simple, but it works so well against the synth. And whenever OMD are playing this, they usually leave it to the encore or the very last song of the concert, because this is the one that gets everybody up and jumping and dancing and all the rest of it. Really, really great track. And I remember I had a VHS copy of a concert that they did around the Crush era in 1985, 5 years after this, and the crowd reaction to this song was unbelievable. Again, brilliant song, and it's my number 18. A number 17, and it's Adam Nance and Stand and Deliver, an absolutely perfect pop song, straight in at number 1 in 1981. I've never ever got fed up with this. It's just so good, and this was the time when Ant-Mania was really exploding. Kings of the Wild Frontier album was huge for them, with 3 top 5 hits. Then Prince Charming album came along. This came between the two, although this did feature on the Prince Charming album. And then the Prince Charming album came out, and it wasn't quite as successful, but it's nearly every bit as good. The follow-up to this was Prince Charming itself, which is another number 1 hit, but Stand and Deliver. Brilliant video, brilliant song, and I guess my number 17. And number 16, and I think this is the best single from 1982. And this is The Associates and Party Fears 2, and this is another one of those songs that I'd never heard anything like it before, never heard anything like the vocals before. The piano or the keyboard part of it is absolutely magnificent. Absolutely love it, and it's from their album Sulk, which is not a bad album, and a couple of other decent singles off it as well, like Club Country and 18 Karat Love Affair. Although my version doesn't have 18 Karat Love Affair on it, it's got an instrumental type version, but I think it's a European copy. At number 15, and it's from the 60s, and this is obviously a reissue single, but it still counts. And it's Procol Harum's Whiter Shade of Pale. Absolutely beautiful. I'm not actually sure the music. I know it's from one of those composers. It's either Bach or something like that there, but it's absolutely wonderful. I remember my mother loved this track, and I just think it's great, and it's my number 15. At number 14, and we have Rod Stewart and Reason to Believe. Well, that is the A side, but you flip it over and you get the B side, which is the one that's played, and that's Maggie May, which again is one of those tracks I've heard for years and years and years, and I still never ever got fed up with it. And I always loved the Top of the Pops performance, which had John Peel playing the mandolin. Absolutely fantastic track from his Every Picture Tells a Story. Now this got to number 1 in 71, but then I think it was released again around 1975 or 76. I think it got top 10 again, so Maggie May is my number 14. And number 13, and we have Slade and Goodbye to Jane. Now this was a number 2 hit in 1972 from their Slade album, and I think this is their best single. It's just a pity it didn't get to number 1. Now Slade did have 6 number 1 hit singles in the UK, so they were massive, and this one has the Slade stomp all over it, and it's just got the hand claps as well. Just a brilliant glam rock track, and I guess my number 13. And at number 12 we have The Jam and Down in the Tube Station at Midnight, and this is the second single from their All Mod Cons album in 1978. I think it only got to number 15 or so, but this was such a leap forward for Paul Weller and The Jam. It's a storytelling song, and whenever I was at school in 5th form and I had to do an RE class, religious education, the teacher asked people to bring in a track to play in front of the class and write down all the lyrics so we could analyse the lyrics, and this is the one I brought in, and a lot of people seemed to like it. I remember one of our guys brought in Meatloaf's Paradise by the Dashboard Light, and he wouldn't play it because he read the lyrics, but still, The Jam, number 12 on my list, Down in the Tube Station at Midnight. At number 11, and we have Elvis Costello and Oliver's Army, and I was obsessed by this song when it came out. It used to be played in the youth club all the time, and yes, it is as catchiest, and yes, it does steal the ABBA piano part from Dancing Queen, but it is such a good song, and it was the opening single from his Armed Forces album, which is probably his best album. Second single being Accidents Will Happen. But Oliver's Army, number 2 hit single 1979, absolutely brilliant, and it's my number 11. At number 10, and we have Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel and Make Me Smile, a number 1 hit in 1975 from his The Best Years of Our Lives album. It's the best song off the album. It's a good album, but this is by far the best song. And to hear like a guitar solo in acoustic guitar with something different, it's catchy, it's got the ooh la las which always win me over, and it's just so melodic. And I've heard a couple of versions of this. Suzi Quatro does an okay version, and Duran Duran, surprisingly enough, do a decent live version of it as well, which ended up as the B-side of the Reflex, the number 1 hit in 1984. But Make Me Smile, absolutely brilliant, and rest in peace Steve Harley, that passed away this year. At number 9, and David Bowie. And I could have picked any David Bowie one, but I've gone with Life on Mars, so I have. Mostly because I love the song. I've never been keen on him doing this live, because I've never thought he's able to sing it as well as he does in the studio recording. But the B-side of this is A Man Who Sold the World, so those 2 tracks alone should even make this number 1. But Life on Mars, brilliant song from Hunky Dory. Now the album came out in 71, the end of 71. And then Ziggy came out, and then it must have been about a year and a half after the Hunky Dory album came out, they released this as a single, and it got to number 3 in the charts. So David Bowie, Life on Mars, and I bought the single when I was 7, and I can remember getting it, and I remember the shop as well. And it was after my father came back from his work, and he was not amused whenever I begged and begged and begged to take me down to the shop before it closed. But still, Life on Mars, excellent, and it's my number 9. At number 8, and one of the most beautiful songs ever written, and it's Simon Garfunkel, and it's Bridge Over Troubled Water. Absolutely beautiful, and obviously the lead vocals are by Art Garfunkel, but I'm glad they are, because I've heard Paul Simon do this in a different way, and it's good, but it's not the same. And anybody else who actually tries to sing this, it's not the same. I've heard Elvis's version and it's not very good, but the track itself still sends shivers down my spine every time I hear the Sail on Silver Girl bit. Absolutely fantastic track, and a number 1 hit in 1970. At number 7, and we have Wings, Mull of Kintyre. Yes, I know it's Mull of Kintyre, and it was number 1 for 9 weeks in 1977, and it is still the best-selling single in the UK that is not a charity single. So it's down to about 4th or 5th now because of Elton John's and Band Aid and all the rest of it. But this is fantastic, and it is actually technically a double A side with Girls' School. This part failed miserably, but Girls' School did okay in America. Maybe it was the Scottish pipes and so forth that the Americans couldn't take, but I love this, and this is another one that sends the shivers and puts the hairs up on my arm whenever I hear the bagpipes come in. Absolutely fantastic track, and I love the video as well whenever they're walking along big grassy parts and looking down at the beach. So Wings, Mull of Kintyre gets my number 7. Now at number 6, and you may think this is really high, but this is one of the very first singles that I ever got. I'm not too sure whether it was the first or not, or the second or the third, but it was one of those 3. And it's The Congregation, and it's Softly Whispering I Love You. I just absolutely love this track, I really do, and I love the 2 albums that they released. Now this is a cover version, they're all cover versions that they do, and I think it's a cover version of a song originally done by, it might be Chad and Jeremy, I'm not sure, I'll put it down on the screen if I'm wrong, but it's a completely different version of it. And then Paul Young did a version about 20 years later, and he really slowed it down, and it's a very good version as well. But Softly Whispering I Love You by The Congregation, now I believe in America this was released under the Mike Curb Congregation, which is a completely different band, so they did a version of it as well. But to me, the original English Congregation is the best, and I love it, and it's my number 6. Now at number 5, and we have Queen. Oh, I wonder which one it could be, and you're wrong. It's Don't Stop Me Now. Now, it could have been Bohemian Rhapsody. However, my head says it should be Bohemian Rhapsody because it's an absolutely brilliant track, but my heart says it's Don't Stop Me Now because it's the one I've always loved the most, and this is another one of those youth club ones. This is again from 1979, which was the big year for me for youth club. I love it. I know it's got CD lyrics and all the rest, but you didn't realise that when you were a kid. It's such an uplifting song, and it's one of those songs whenever you're playing it in the car, yank it up loud. It's fantastic. So Don't Stop Me Now from their Jazz album, which was released in 78, but the single itself is 79, is my number 5. So number 4, and we have a number 1 hit from 1976, and it's Fernando by ABBA. Now you all know I love ABBA, and this is my favourite single by ABBA, and it just takes me back to being a child and seeing Top of the Pops, seeing them around the fire singing away, and Frida looking absolutely gorgeous in her bob haircut, and Agneta looking absolutely fantastic as well, and the 2 boys not looking so fantastic. But I honestly thought when I was a kid they were outside doing it, but it's obviously in the studio. But still, brilliant track, and it didn't get on any album, although I believe it may have got on the Arrival album in Australia, but it's now bonus tracks on CDs. But number 1 hit for ABBA, and it's on their first greatest hits, and it was actually this song that really sold that greatest hits, the one on the park bench, which sold by the bucket load. So Fernando, Arrival is my number 4. So we get into the top 3, and my number 3 is T-Rex and Hot Love, and this really is the start of glam rock. Bolan had finally made it successful with his previous single Ride a White Swan, and I was nearly going to pick it as well, but I'm going to pick Hot Love this time, and it got to number 2. This went up the whole way to number 1, and with the Top of the Pops appearance, I'm not too sure who the makeup artist was, but she put a little glitter teardrop, or a couple of teardrops, under his eye before he went out, and that was the talking point of children at school, and that was the start of glam rock really, and everything went ridiculously glam, but you can blame this for it. And this is one of those sort of Hey Jude type songs. Instead of the na na nas at the end, you get the la la las, and in America they did an edit of it which put the las in the middle and then at the end, whereas the original version is only at the end. But absolutely brilliant track that just bounces along beautifully. Number 1 hit, 71, and it's Hot Love. T-Rex is my number 3. Number 2, and I'm going to go with Electric Light Orchestra and Mr. Blue Sky. And this is one of the most uplifting songs ever. It's absolutely fantastic. It always puts me in a good mood. And whenever the sun shines, it's even better. It's really excellent track from their Out of the Blue album, and I believe it was their second single off that. I think Turn to Stone was the first, this was the second. Then it was, I think it was Sweet Talking Woman, and then Wild West Hero, or those two could have been the other way around. But yeah, the last song on side 3, the perfect side of ELO music, is side 3 of Out of the Blue, and again it just makes me feel so good. Brilliant track, and it is my number 2. And the best single ever, and I do have it in my collection, and it is Kate Bush and Wuthering Heights from 1978. And whenever this came out, everyone thought, what on earth is that? That girl is screeching. My brother bought the single, and I thought, this is terrible, and he played it again and again and again, and the more I listened to it, the more I thought, my god, this is a genius song. And it did get to number 1. Absolutely brilliant, from her debut album The Kick Inside, which is a good album. The second single was The Man With His Child in His Eyes, which is a very basic ballad compared to this. This is just unbelievably good, and the guitar solo at the end of this, and I can't remember who did it. It wasn't David Gilmour, it was somebody else, is unbelievably brilliant. Now, she did re-record this for The Whole Story, where she put in new vocals. I think it's the same backing, and it's every bit as good, and it became the B-side of Experiment 4. But my number 1 is the original version of Wuthering Heights. I will say though the LP version is better because the guitar solo is extended slightly. This one is sort of faded out, but still, number 1 single ever released in my book is Kate Bush and Wuthering Heights. So that's my rundown of my top 100 singles. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm not too sure what the next video will be, but whatever it will be, it'll be coming pretty soon. So until then, all the best now. Bye bye.